The silence of the steppe meets you before you even see the ruins. You descend along a pale slope where the grass has thinned to nothing, leaving only loose gravel and earth. Each stone crunches softly beneath your steps, but the sound dies almost immediately, swallowed by air so still it feels as though the land itself is holding its breath. The sky stretches flat and endless above you, a dim wash of gray that hides the stars. The path narrows as you descend, folding into the side of a shallow canyon. Thin shadows gather here, stretched like ink across the rock, broken only where your light brushes against them. The smell of dry earth lingers, tinged with something faintly metallic, like rust, or perhaps rain that hasn't touched this soil in centuries. You wouldn't believe the stories these walls could tell if they spoke. The canyon deepens into a channel carved by time, or by hands long forgotten. Along its edges, moss clings stubbornly to cracks in the stone, thriving in impossible places. When you brush your hand against it, the texture feels damp and cool, utterly out of place in a place so dry. You wonder why it grows here, as if nourished by something hidden beneath the surface. Every so often, echoes drift along the stone corridor, the faint rustle of a pebble shifting, the whisper of a wind that never seems to reach you directly. Sometimes, the echoes mimic your own steps, just a half second too late, as though someone walks behind you without ever revealing themselves. A ridge rises suddenly, guiding you toward a wider hollow. Here the floor dips into a natural bowl, its edges lined with jagged stones that jut upward like teeth. You pause, sensing the weight of the place. Researchers still argue that some ancient basins served as ritual gathering spaces, but standing here, it feels less like a stage and more like a mouth about to swallow what enters. You kneel, running your fingers across the ground. Smooth patches of stone gleam faintly where sand hasn't yet covered them, as though polished by hands long ago. You trace lines that curve in shallow arcs, too precise to be natural. Perhaps these were once channels, guiding water or light, or perhaps guiding something else entirely. The hollow narrows again, forming a sloping tunnel. You lower yourself carefully, shoulders brushing rough walls. Your breath fogs faintly, though the air should be warm here. The scent of dust grows sharper, mixed with the faint tang of mineral veins hidden within the rock. As you step deeper, your light catches something ahead, a figure carved into the wall, its features worn by centuries, but unmistakably human. One eye is intact, gazing outward with an expression both stern and sorrowful. The other half of the face has cracked away, leaving an empty void where stone should be. For a moment, you swear that the hollow socket watches you more closely than the eye that remains. You linger, listening. The silence here isn't just absence of sound. It is presence, heavy and deliberate, as though the earth itself insists on quiet, forbidding any disturbance. You wonder if those who built this place sealed it with silence on purpose, binding sound as much as stone. A subtle light glimmers deeper inside the passage. It flickers, not steady like fire, but shifting as though reflected across water. You cannot yet see the source, only the glow brushing faintly against the uneven walls. It beckons you, promising answers or questions better left unasked. Before you take another step, leave a trace of yourself here. A like, a subscribe, as if carving your name into the stone. And if you can, write in the comments where you are and what time it is. The passage tightens one last time, stone closing in on both sides. You feel the weight of earth pressing overhead, layers upon layers stacked in silence. Just ahead, the faint glow strengthens, illuminating the outline of a doorway. Its edges are sharp, unnaturally precise, as though carved yesterday instead of centuries ago. The stone surface gleams faintly, interrupted only by a crack running diagonally across its face. You pause at the threshold. Behind the door waits the first true chamber of the Veylen Steppe ruins, though it does not yet reveal its secrets. For now, you only stand at the edge, sensing the weight of history pressing against the sealed entrance. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The doorway lingers in your memory as you step into the next hollow. At first, it feels as if you've slipped into a chamber not meant to be entered, a place designed for echoes rather than footsteps. The air here is cooler, tinged with dust that tastes faintly metallic on your tongue. Shadows cling to the corners, deepening wherever your light cannot reach, as though the dark has grown roots and refuses to be moved. Before you, the ground rises unevenly, broken into ridges and shelves of stone. You move carefully, tracing the jagged terrain, and then you see them, pillars, toppled in scattered angles. They lie half buried in the dust, like bones too heavy for time to carry away. Some have shattered into fragments, their faces weathered beyond recognition, while others remain intact enough to suggest they once stood upright, holding something far larger than the empty air that surrounds you now. The first fallen pillar you touch feels colder than the others, its surface etched with grooves so shallow they might be mistaken for cracks. Yet when you lean close, you notice a deliberate rhythm in the carving, almost like writing, though the lines twist in ways no known script should. Researchers still argue that marks like these are signs of communication, while others insist they are merely the accidents of erosion. But you can't shake the impression that whoever made them wanted to leave something behind, something that still whispers beneath the dust. Around you, the hollow widens. You notice that the pillars aren't scattered at random. They form a ring, or what's left of one. Each fallen stone lies just far enough from the next to suggest symmetry, as though the space once hosted a circle of guardians, or perhaps an audience. You imagine the structure whole, rows of towering columns standing shoulder to shoulder, gazing inward at whatever had stood in their center. In the middle of the ring, only a flat stone remains. Its surface is cracked, edges softened by time, but it draws your eye nonetheless. You step closer, brushing away a thin layer of dust. Beneath it, faint impressions appear, shapes resembling feet, pressed into the surface like footprints, but hardened into permanence. They seem to mark a place where someone stood for far too long, watching or waiting. You pause, and the silence stretches. It grows so heavy that for a moment you think you hear a heartbeat, not your own, but something deeper, slower, resonating in the stone itself. You press your hand against the cracked slab, and the vibration vanishes as though embarrassed to be caught. Beyond the circle, fragments of statues lean against the earth. Some are no more than torsos, stripped of their heads or limbs, while others are faces worn into anonymity. You run your light across them, and one detail catches your breath. Several of the statues have no mouths. Smooth stone stretches where lips should be, polished flat, as though silence itself was carved into their design. You wonder why. Was this deliberate? A people who believed that voices could not be trusted, or perhaps feared that sound might awaken something best left untouched. The thought settles uncomfortably in your chest, like dust refusing to be exhaled. A sudden breeze slips through the chamber, though no entrance is visible except the one you came from. The fallen pillars shudder slightly, as if stirred by a memory, and the statues seem to lean closer, though you know they haven't moved. The breeze carries a scent with it, faintly floral, strangely sweet, utterly wrong for a cavern of dust and stone. It vanishes almost as quickly as it arrived, leaving only questions behind. Your eyes catch on something else, a slanted slab along the far wall, leaning in a way that feels unnatural. Its edges don't blend with the surrounding stone. The more you stare, the more you notice a narrow seam beneath it, almost like a lid half shut. You take a careful step closer, then another, until the outline of a hidden entrance becomes clear. The slab hides a passage. Its surface is rough, but where you touch near the edge, the stone feels different, smoother, more deliberate, worn by hands rather than weather. You shift your light downward, and beneath the seam, you catch the faintest glimpse of darkness, pure and untouched, waiting for you. The silence presses in again, denser now, as though the very air wants to dissuade you. You glance back at the ring of fallen pillars, at the statues without mouths, at the cracked central stone with its ghostly footprints. They all seem to align, pointing not at each other, but at the hidden way forward. You hesitate, listening to the hush that refuses to break. Then you lean closer, pressing your palm against the slanted slab. The surface vibrates faintly, humming just enough to suggest there's something alive on the other side. You exhale slowly, steadying yourself. If the silence of the step has guarded its secrets for so long, then tonight, perhaps, you will hear them. The seam beneath the slab feels like a threshold. You linger a moment longer, but the silence offers no objections, no resistance, only that heavy pause that makes your own breathing sound too loud. When you slip past, shoulders brushing the stone, the air changes. It thickens with a dampness you hadn't felt before, carrying the faint odor of mineral water and old soil. The passage dips gently downward. Your light trembles along the walls, catching ripples carved into the rock. At first, you think they are tool marks, chisels biting into stone, but then you notice the rhythm. They curve smoothly, folding in on themselves like waves frozen mid-motion. Your fingertips graze the ridges, and they feel too soft for age, as though worn recently, though you know that can't be true. The tunnel opens into a broad basin carved from the bedrock. You pause at the edge, gazing down into the hollow floor. It is wide and shallow, stretching in overlapping depressions like the rings of a dried lake. Each hollow links to another, connected by narrow channels that seem deliberately carved. But the strangest part is the sound, or rather, the lack of it. You expect echoes here. A whisper, a cough, a pebble slipping loose should ricochet through the chamber. Instead, your presence is met with muffled stillness. Even the crunch of your steps fades the moment it begins, like sound itself has been dampened, soaked into the stone. You find yourself holding your breath just to test it, listening for the rush of blood in your ears. Then, faintly, you hear it, a hum. At first, you think it belongs to your imagination, the aftertaste of silence. But as you move across the basins, the hum sharpens. It doesn't echo, yet it vibrates, low and steady, like the resonance of an instrument hidden beneath the floor. You kneel and press your palm against the stone. A faint tremor runs through it, pulsing as though the earth is exhaling in rhythm. Researchers still argue that certain ancient sites were designed with acoustics in mind, amplifying chants or music. But here, the opposite seems true. This place swallows sound, yet leaves behind a phantom vibration, as though the air itself remembers a voice long silenced. You wonder why. The channels etched between basins glisten faintly under your light. Moisture clings there, thin as veins of glass. You follow them, tracing their paths until you reach the center. There, half buried in dust and lichen, stands a fragment of stone shaped like a pedestal. Its top is smooth, though cracked at one corner, and the surface is stained darker than the stone around it. On impulse, you place your hand on the pedestal. The hum sharpens, resonating briefly beneath your skin before fading away again. You pull back, unsettled, and your light catches something beyond, a cluster of upright stones at the far edge of the basin. They stand unevenly, leaning like crooked teeth, yet their alignment suggests intention. Between them, the ground dips into a deeper channel, funneling toward a narrow arch that leads further underground. The arch itself is rough, not carved with the same precision as the pedestal or basins, but there is something magnetic about its darkness. Before you move closer, you notice something carved into the upright stones. At first glance, they appear cracked, but when you shine your light at an angle, the lines align into patterns, spirals, intersecting circles, almost like maps. Some seem to mirror constellations, though distorted, bent into unfamiliar shapes. You trace them, and your fingers come away dusted with faint grit, as though the carvings are newer than the rest of the ruin. The hum thickens again. It rises not from the stones, but from the basins themselves, low and steady, as though some buried choir has begun to breathe. You pause, half expecting the upright stones to shift, but they remain silent. Only the vibrations remind you that this place has not been entirely abandoned. You stand at the threshold of the arch. Beyond it, the air seems darker, denser, as if sound itself refuses to escape. The hum presses faintly against your chest, steady as a heartbeat. You step closer, and the basin behind you sighs into stillness, its resonance fading. At the arch's edge, you glance back once more. The basins lie empty, their smooth hollows glinting under your light. For a moment, they almost resemble giant ears, listening long after the world above has forgotten them. You duck beneath the arch and slip into the next passage. The passage narrows, the stone pressing close enough that your shoulders brush rough edges with every step. Your light trembles over the walls, catching faint scratches and chips. Whether the work of tools or the slow shifting of rock, you cannot be certain. The air here feels stale, tinged with the faint sourness of something sealed away too long. When the corridor widens, it does so suddenly, spilling you into a chamber that feels taller than it should, its ceiling lost in darkness. You step forward carefully, listening for the soft crunch of your boots. But again, the silence plays tricks. Your steps fade into nothing, almost before they begin. It is like walking across velvet, the world padded against sound. Then your light finds it. A figure half buried in stone, its face protruding from the wall at a crooked angle. An idol. The stone has cracked across the brow, splitting it in two uneven halves. One eye still stares outward, worn but unmistakably human, its gaze frozen in quiet judgment. The other side of the face is shattered, broken into jagged stone fragments that trail into the floor. You step closer. The unbroken eye glints faintly under your light, and for a moment it feels less like a carving and more like something still alive, something watching. The fractured half of the idol seems even more haunting. The cracks cut deep into the stone, sharp enough to catch your sleeve as you lean closer. The silence here is heavier. You can almost hear it pressing into your ears, filling the chamber with its weight. And then, a sound. A faint trickle, like water running somewhere unseen. You freeze, straining to listen, but it vanishes as quickly as it came, leaving only the idol's stare. Around the chamber, other fragments of statues lean against the wall, some broken into torsos, others collapsed into unrecognizable rubble. Several have mouths open, wide as if caught mid-cry. Their broken lips curl in stone agony, yet no voice escapes them. It makes the idol's silence feel deliberate, as though this one was carved to outlast the others, its watch unbroken even after centuries of collapse. You lean back, tilting your light upward. The ceiling above ripples with cracks, but none align with the idol. It is as though the ruin crumbles all around it, but spares this one figure, keeping its half-shattered face as the chamber's guardian. You wouldn't believe the stories this wall could tell if it spoke. The thought lingers with you. Who made this idol? What purpose did it serve? Researchers still argue that idols like these were meant as protectors, sentinels carved to hold silence rather than to break it. Others believe they were marks of memory, faces of those lost, preserved in stone so their silence could endure. Your hand brushes the cracked cheek. The stone feels colder than the rest of the chamber. A faint vibration thrums beneath your palm, too faint to be sound, more like the whisper of pressure under the surface. You pull back quickly, half expecting the idol's one eye to blink. Across the floor lies a shard of the broken face. You pick it up carefully, and its texture surprises you. It feels polished on the inside, smooth as glass, while the outside remains rough and weathered. It's as though the idol was hollow, its shell filled with something else long since lost. The shard slips from your fingers, clattering softly against the stone. You wait for the echo, but again, nothing. The sound is swallowed whole. At the far end of the chamber, a dark slit opens between two leaning slabs. It is narrow, crooked, and almost hidden, but once you notice it, you cannot look away. The space beyond looks darker than the rest, almost black enough to absorb your light. You hesitate, glancing once more at the idol. The cracked face watches, half whole and half broken, a guardian that will not follow you, but will remember you nonetheless. The silence of its gaze presses against your back even as you step toward the slit. The corridor waiting beyond promises something deeper, something more unsettling than what you've seen so far. You pause at the threshold, knowing that once you enter, the idol's stare will remain behind you, yet never truly leave. You slip through the dark opening. The slit of stone narrows behind you as you step into a tighter corridor. The air changes again, growing heavier with each breath, as though every step down this hidden passage trades part of your lungs for the weight of stone above. The silence is sharper here, not the padded quiet of the basin or the chamber with the cracked idol, but something keen, almost metallic, ringing faintly against your ears. The walls press close. Your light barely has space to stretch, bouncing off surfaces carved in a deliberate slant. Each slab is tilted slightly inward, not natural, not accidental. They form a crooked funnel that seems designed to usher you forward, deeper, as if this passage were less a choice and more an insistence. Your hand glides over one slab and finds it warm, almost alive. Not warm like sunlight, but like breath trapped inside the stone. You draw back quickly, then press again, and the warmth is gone. You wonder why stone that hasn't felt the sun in centuries would hold such a secret pulse. The passage takes a sharp turn downward. You angle your light, and it flickers across what looks like steps, but not the wide, proud stairways of temples. These are thin, irregular, almost broken. You descend carefully, each step wobbling beneath your weight, each edge crumbling just enough to remind you how long they've been waiting for someone foolish enough to test them. Halfway down, you pause. A sound slips through the stone, too soft, too quick. Not quite a whisper, not quite a sigh. It brushes your ear like someone leaning too close in the dark. You spin, light racing up the passage, but nothing waits there except the narrow slit you left behind. The silence that follows is worse. When you reach the bottom, the corridor opens abruptly into a chamber so dark it seems to swallow your light whole. The floor is uneven, scattered with shards of stone, and when you look closer, you realize they are pieces of pillars, cut too precisely to be rubble. Someone dismantled them, piece by piece, and left them strewn like discarded bones. In the far corner, a gap splits the wall. Unlike the slit you just passed through, this gap feels intentional, its edges smooth, shaped as though it was always meant to conceal. You lower your light and see what lies just beyond, a hidden passage. The air that seeps from it is colder than the chamber. It carries a faint trace of something sweet, almost like flowers, almost like rot, a paradox that unsettles you more than either scent alone would. You kneel and press your light into the gap. The floor slopes sharply downward, too steep for comfort, and vanishes into darkness. You hesitate at the edge, tracing the stone with your fingers. Scratches line the surface, overlapping in chaotic patterns. Some resemble claw marks, others look as though tools once dug furiously here. They point inward, always inward, as though many hands tried to enter, but few tried to leave. You pull back, the silence pressing harder now, more deliberate, almost like a warning. The cracked idol behind you feels closer, though you left it chambers ago. You remember its half-whole stare, the shard that clattered without echo. This passage, too, feels like a continuation of that silence, a place where sound itself is forbidden. Still, the hidden gap draws you. Perhaps it is curiosity. Perhaps It is the pull of something older than questions. You crouch lower, sliding one leg into the gap, then the other, and with a slow breath, you commit yourself to the slope. The stone accepts you without resistance. Behind, the chamber closes, the rubble of dismantled pillars lying quiet as grave markers. Ahead, the hidden passage leads you deeper, where the silence begins to hum again, faint and steady, like the promise of a secret waiting too long in the dark. If you're still awake, let me know in the comments. Or maybe you've already drifted halfway. The slope eases as you shuffle lower, palms brushing against the walls for balance. The stone feels smoother here, not chipped or broken, but polished, as if countless hands once ran along its surface. The air tightens around you, thin and cold, yet each breath still carries that faint sweetness, unsettling in its persistence. Your light stretches into a corridor that runs narrow and straight, its ceiling lower than before, forcing you to stoop slightly as you move forward. The walls curve inward, not just shaping the space, but guiding sound. You test it with a whisper, nothing more than a sigh, and it bends unnaturally, curling back toward you as though unwilling to let go. Then, without warning, the corridor answers. A murmur slips across the stone, faint, distant, repeating something you didn't say. It's not an echo, not truly. The rhythm is off. The words, if they are words at all, arrive a heartbeat too late, softened into nonsense. Still, it carries a cadence of speech, as if someone unseen is trying to mimic you, or to remember what once was said here. You press your hand to the wall, and the vibration is real. The stone hums, low and steady, like a string plucked long ago, and still trembling. You wouldn't believe the stories these walls could tell if they spoke, and perhaps, in their way, they already are. The corridor stretches farther than your light can pierce. You move cautiously, every step clicking against the floor in muted taps. The sound doesn't scatter outward as it should. It stays close, clinging to your ankles, reluctant to wander into the dark. A few paces later, the wall on your left dips slightly, forming a recess. You stop, leaning your light in. Carved into the hollow are lines upon lines of glyphs, etched shallow, worn almost flat. You run your fingers over them, and they spark a strange warmth against your skin, similar to what you felt on the tilted slabs earlier. Researchers still argue that such carvings were prayers, warnings, or even maps, but here they feel more like confessions, pressed into the stone by hands desperate not to forget. The murmur behind you grows louder, closer, as if the glyphs themselves have caught your movement and begun to repeat it. You quicken your pace, heart pacing along with your footsteps. The corridor narrows again, pressing you between two walls so tight you can't extend your elbows. Your light grazes the stone and reveals new marks, scratches, not carved, but gouged. They overlap chaotically, some clawed deep, some faint, almost timid. They lead onward, and your breath falters when you notice they stop abruptly at a sealed seam in the wall ahead. The seam runs floor to ceiling, straight as a blade's edge, yet without hinges or handle. Just a line, just a suggestion. You lean closer. The murmur thickens, condensing into something almost recognizable. A phrase, maybe. A name. You press your ear to the seam, and the vibration hums directly into your skull, filling it with sound that isn't quite sound. You wonder why the builders of a forgotten civilization would craft such a door, then leave it sealed. You wonder what waits behind, and you wonder faintly whether you've already heard it calling you. A faint shift underfoot startles you. The floor tilts, almost imperceptibly, like the corridor itself sighs beneath your weight. Dust drifts from the seam, catching your light in a thin, golden mist. For the first time, the murmur falters. Silence presses in, thick and absolute, like a hand over your mouth. You step back. The seam holds. The silence holds. And in that stillness, you feel watched, not from behind, not from ahead, but from the stone itself, as though the walls have opened an unseen eye. You steady your breath. The corridor bends just beyond the seam, and though every part of you wants to linger, you know the way forward waits in the turn, not the wall. You move on, one step at a time. The humming resumes faintly, softer now, less like a voice and more like a memory of one. The glyphs vanish, the scratches fade, and the stone grows plain again, as though ashamed of having revealed too much. The corridor of whispers, you think, is not meant to explain itself. It is only meant to remind you that silence is never empty. And with that thought, you step into the next bend, where the air shifts once again, and the stone breathes differently, preparing you for what lies ahead. The corridor loosens its grip on you as the walls lean outward, the ceiling rising higher with each step. Your shoulders uncoil, your breath lengthens, and the light stretches farther than it has in a while. The whispers fade into silence again. Not gone, only tucked away behind you, like a secret you've carried too far to put down. The air changes first. It smells faintly of ash, though the walls bear no soot, no blackened scars. Beneath it lingers another note, earthy and bitter, like dried herbs, long forgotten in clay jars. It grows thicker as the passage opens into a vast chamber. You pause at the threshold. Stone altars stand in a row, long and low, each carved from a single slab. Their surfaces are cracked but deliberate, grooves cut into them like channels for liquid to flow. You wonder why these altars were left in such an orderly line, their spacing too precise for accident. Your light sweeps the chamber and finds more. Altars set in a wide semicircle, all facing inward toward a central dais. On that dais rests a block taller than the rest, its surface oddly smooth, untouched by the cracks that lace the others. Dust lies thick on everything, but here the dust looks different, less like neglect, more like something placed deliberately, as though time itself has been instructed to leave this stone veiled. You step closer, and your foot taps against something brittle. A fragment skitters across the floor. You stoop to lift it. Bone. Not large, perhaps from an arm or a bird, but unmistakably bone, weathered to a pale ivory. Around the dais, other fragments scatter in small clusters, some tucked between the grooves of the lower altars. They feel less like offerings and more like remnants, abandoned when their purpose was finished. You set the fragment down carefully, and the chamber seems to notice. The silence here is taut, watchful. You circle the dais, eyes brushing across the walls. Murals linger in faint pigment, reds and ochres dulled with age. They depict figures not entirely human, elongated limbs, faces half hidden by masks, or perhaps masks fused with flesh. In one mural, the figures hold bowls. In another, they raise knives of jagged stone. The channels carved into the altars mirror the painted streams flowing from those bowls. Researchers still argue that such imagery was ritual or myth, but standing here, you sense neither comfort nor devotion. Instead, the room hums with function, as if ritual was less about faith and more about necessity. A playful thought crosses your mind. Imagine the comments section, debating whether this was sacrifice, initiation, or just a very bad banquet hall. The sarcasm softens the tension, but only for a moment. The central block calls your attention again. You lay a hand on its smooth surface. Unlike the others, it is cold, not the ordinary cold of buried stone, but a chill that bites through your palm like metal in winter. You jerk back, breath quick. When you look again, a faint glow shimmers at its base. Not bright, not steady, but like embers breathing beneath stone. It flickers once, then fades, leaving you to question whether you saw it at all. You wonder why a forgotten civilization would seal whispers in corridors and place glowing blocks at the heart of altars. You wonder if these were warnings, or tools, or both. Your gaze drifts to the far end of the hall, where a narrow staircase climbs along the wall. It disappears into an archway draped with stalactites, their edges dripping with frozen beads of calcite. You tilt your head and almost laugh. The arch looks less like stone and more like a jaw yawning open, a doorway disguised as teeth. Before you leave, you glance once more at the altars. Dust lies undisturbed. Grooves remain empty, but the memory of the murals lingers sharp in your mind. Figures raising bowls, streams running red, the central block waiting in silence. You step toward the staircase. The chamber watches you leave, its rows of altars standing still as mourners, and for a moment you feel as though you've trespassed not into a ruin, but into a room where the ceremony only paused, waiting for someone like you to arrive. The staircase groans beneath your weight, each step trembling like it hasn't been trusted in centuries. Chips of stone flake away and tumble into the dark below, where the echo rings far longer than you expect. You climb carefully, tracing the rough wall with your fingers until the steps level out into a landing. Here, the air shifts again, thin, sharp, like the bite of mountain wind, though you are buried far beneath stone. A low current brushes past your skin, and you realize the chamber ahead must connect to some wider cavern, something that breathes. You lift your light. The landing opens into a bridge. A slab of stone spans across a chasm too wide for your beam to reach. The floor beneath is gone, swallowed into a gulf of shadow. You lean forward, cautious, and drop a small pebble from the landing. It clicks once, then nothing. No second strike, no rolling echo. The depth is immeasurable, or perhaps the void is not stone at all. The bridge itself is narrow, no railings, no ornamentation, only a spine of rock stretching into dark. Its surface is slick with moisture, patches of green-black moss clinging to the cracks. You press one foot down, and it holds, though your mind insists that it shouldn't. You step further, and the emptiness yawns around you. Halfway across, your light flickers over the wall opposite. Strange carvings line the cavern face, spirals, concentric circles, symbols that look less like language and more like ripples frozen in stone. They glow faintly in places where your light doesn't touch, as if they've been waiting for your presence to stir them awake. You pause. The glow wavers, not steady like fire, not cold like crystal, but something in between. It seems to pulse with your heartbeat, slowing when you stop, quickening when you step again. Your balance wavers. You crouch lower, pressing one hand to the bridge. It hums faintly, not vibration, not sound, but sensation carried through the stone. You wonder why a forgotten civilization would build a bridge over a void and lace the walls with living light. A playful line slips into your mind. If this were a theme park ride, no insurance would cover it. The thought makes you exhale, tension breaking just enough for you to keep moving. The opposite side approaches. The symbols flare brighter as you near, then dim again when your light reaches them, retreating like shy animals. You reach the far landing and steady yourself against the wall, grateful for the illusion of solid ground. The wall here bears more carvings, this time figures. They stretch long, their arms bending at impossible angles, their faces little more than ovals without features. Some raise their arms toward the ceiling, others seem to lean into the spirals etched around them. It is unclear if they are worshiping or being drawn in. Researchers still argue that such motifs were metaphors, but you cannot shake the sense that they were instructions. The landing curves into a tunnel, narrower again, as though deliberately funneling you after such vast space. You glance back once at the bridge. In the distance, faint lights still pulse on the far cavern wall. They resemble stars caught underground, arranged in patterns you cannot map but feel you should recognize. The air through the tunnel tastes different, metallic, sharp, tinged with the mineral bite of water that has traveled far. A faint drip echoes ahead, steady as a heartbeat. You step forward, away from the bridge, carrying the pulse of its hum inside your chest. Behind you, the chasm remains silent, as if the void were listening, waiting for the sound of your return. The tunnel widens suddenly, spilling you into a vast hall that seems too large to have been carved by human hands. Or perhaps it was, but with intentions that defy comprehension. Shadows stretch along the walls, dark and sharp-edged, as if they've been pressed into the stone and left to fester. The air is heavier here, scented with something faintly sweet and iron-rich, like old blood mixed with honey. Your light skims across the floor. It's smooth in patches, interrupted by fragments of stone, broken tiles or slabs, etched with symbols and shallow grooves. They whisper of a civilization, careful in its destruction, deliberate in leaving behind only hints of what once thrived. At the center, the hall widens into a circular platform, raised slightly above the surrounding floor. Here stands a structure unlike any you've seen in the ruins so far. A dais surrounded by towering shelves carved directly from the walls. They are filled with stone tablets, arranged with meticulous order, each covered in faded glyphs that shimmer faintly under your light. The room hums, not faintly this time, but strongly, vibrating beneath your feet, resonating through your chest. You kneel and press your palm to the central dais, The vibration intensifies, humming a low, deep note that seems to speak in a language older than memory. And then, movement. A tablet shifts, not toppled by your weight, not knocked by gravity, but sliding slowly along its shelf. You step back, heart pounding, and another tablet slides, following the first. The sound is barely audible, a scratch, a whisper, a murmur, but it is deliberate. You would laugh at the absurdity if the air itself weren't pressing so heavily against your lungs. A third tablet moves. You notice the glyphs glow more brightly as they drift, the patterns bending and swirling as though alive. Light reflects off edges you hadn't seen, catching in impossible angles. You lean closer, and the stone beneath your fingers vibrates again. Not subtle, not playful, but insistent, like a heartbeat demanding attention. Your instincts scream to leave, but your curiosity anchors you. The room feels ancient, forgotten, yet purposeful. Someone, or something, built this place to endure. Perhaps it was never meant for living eyes, only for those patient enough to witness its quiet awakening. You glance around. The walls stretch higher than your light can reach, lined with more glyphs, more carvings, spiraling upward into darkness. Shadows pulse with each vibration, and for a moment, you imagine them moving independently, dancing across the stone in patterns that make no sense and all sense at once. The central dais shivers beneath your palm, sending tremors along your arm. A faint hum now threads through your ears, merging with the vibrations beneath your feet. You step back, and the tablets halt mid-slide as though acknowledging your hesitation. A low whistle rises from the shelves, soft, almost like breath. It curls around your ears and down your spine. You realize the movement of the tablets isn't random. It forms a path, an arrangement, guiding you deeper into the chamber. Your foot nudges a shard of broken stone, and it clatters across the floor. Normally, such a sound would echo endlessly, but here it vanishes. The vibration responds, a pulse running through the hall in time with your heartbeat. The room, you sense, is alive, and you are part of its rhythm now. You step forward along the path marked by the shifting tablets, tracing the invisible line they form. Each step deepens the hum, and now, faintly, you hear it. Whispers, almost intelligible, like voices from a dream. Names, warnings, instructions, you cannot tell, but the feeling is unmistakable. Something waits at the far end of the hall, watching, assessing, welcoming, or judging. At last, you reach a pedestal unlike the others. It is taller, carved with spirals that seem to twist upward toward a shadowed ceiling. On it rests a single tablet, larger than the rest, its glyphs catching light in impossible ways. You kneel to study it, and in that moment, the hum swells, the shadows shift, and the entire hall seems to lean in toward you. You realize the strongest suspense is here, not in what has been revealed, but in what has yet to speak. You step away from the pedestal, letting the hum settle into a quieter vibration beneath your feet. The hall behind you remains still, the shifting tablets now frozen in place, as if your presence alone has coaxed the room into patience. You exhale slowly, tasting the metallic tang of air heavy with ancient stone and whispered secrets. Ahead, the corridor widens once more, opening into a chamber that feels like a throne room abandoned for centuries. Massive stone seats line the walls, each carved with intricate patterns and raised above the floor on small platforms. Dust layers their surfaces unevenly, yet here and there, faint glimmers catch your light. Gouges, scratches, or perhaps the remnants of gold leaf long worn away. The air carries the scent of decay, softened by minerals, a faint sweetness that makes your head tilt in confusion. Moss creeps along the base of the thrones, green and alive, thriving in the damp shadow of this forgotten place. Each throne seems to command its own small area, as if each were a miniature kingdom preserved in silence. A subtle vibration runs through the floor as you step closer. You notice the thrones aren't symmetrical. Some tilt, others lean, but the arrangement feels intentional. You imagine a council once convened here, silent, unseen, their faces hidden beneath hoods or masks, speaking in gestures or whispers. You pause at the largest throne, centrally placed, elevated slightly above the others. Its carvings are faintly different, more precise, deliberate, as though the master carver wanted this seat to stand apart. You brush your hand across the stone. The surface is cold, but the sensation is uncanny, almost like it remembers each fingertip that has touched it. Researchers still argue whether such halls were political, ceremonial, or purely symbolic. Standing here, you feel the weight of authority long absent, the quiet echo of decisions made and unmade. Your light drifts to the far end of the hall, where a faint arch leads into darkness. You step closer and hear the soft drip of water somewhere below. The sound is grounding, almost mundane, yet it heightens the chamber's otherworldly feeling, threading a gentle rhythm through the suspense that has been building for sections now. If you're still awake, let me know in the comments. Or maybe you've already drifted halfway. You notice scratches along the stone floor, shallow and intentional, leading toward the arch. The marks look like footprints frozen in time, bare, small, and purposeful. You follow them, curiosity tugging at your every step. The air grows colder here, carrying the faintest hum, almost imperceptible, resonating from the distant end of the hall. Between the thrones, shadows twist subtly, elongated and ever-changing. For a moment, you feel watched, not from behind, but from within the stone itself, as though the room has eyes you cannot see. You exhale, steadying yourself, and step forward. At the archway's edge, you pause. Beyond lies a corridor, darkened by time, yet faint light shimmers along the edges, highlighting jagged stonework. You feel the pull of the unknown, the call of deeper chambers yet to be explored, and the hall seems to sigh softly, as if granting permission to move onward. You take a final look at the throne room, its quiet authority etched in stone, and step through the arch, leaving the seats and their mossy shadows behind. The archway narrows and then releases you into a cavern, unlike any you've traversed before. The walls glisten faintly, wet with mineral deposits that catch your light and scatter it in 1,000 tiny reflections. Each droplet, each vein of crystal, shimmers like stars trapped underground. You pause, letting your gaze drink in the beauty, feeling the hum of stone beneath your feet pulse in rhythm with your own heartbeat. The air here is cooler, carrying the scent of damp earth and iron, sharp but not unpleasant. You take a slow step forward, and the cavern seems to stretch endlessly, folding upon itself like a liquid maze. Shadows twist along the walls, dancing and shifting as if they have lives of their own. You brush your fingers against the damp rock, feeling the smoothness of polished stone in contrast to jagged mineral veins. In the center of the cavern lies a shallow pool, its surface perfectly still, reflecting the ceiling's glimmer like a mirror. Tiny, almost imperceptible ripples radiate from the edges, though no breeze moves through the air. You kneel beside it, your reflection fractured and multiplied by the scattered crystals. Something about the way the water holds the faint glow makes you wonder if it's merely water, or if it remembers everything that has ever touched its surface. Researchers still argue that subterranean pools in ancient ruins were utilitarian, ceremonial, or even sacred. Standing here, it feels more like a repository of memory. Each reflection, each shimmer, seems to whisper secrets too faint for the ears, but clear to the mind. You move carefully along the pool's edge, avoiding jagged crystals that jut upward like frozen flames. Faint scratches in the stone floor lead toward a tunnel on the far side, dark but catching flecks of reflected light. The path seems simple, yet the cavern's hum grows stronger the closer you approach, a low vibration that threads along your spine. Tiny stalactites hang from the ceiling, dripping intermittently into the pool. Each drop echoes softly, blending with the low hum into a rhythm that feels almost musical. You can't help but trace the pattern with your fingertips, tapping lightly in time with the falling water, half expecting the cavern to respond. It does, not with sound, but with a faint shimmer along the walls, as if acknowledging your presence. A playful thought drifts through your mind. Imagine if the builders were just as fascinated by their reflections as we are by theirs. You chuckle softly, the sound swallowed almost immediately by the cavern's reverberation. You notice faint glyphs etched into the stones near the tunnel. They're tiny, subtle, almost like footprints frozen in time, spiraling toward the passage ahead. Their placement feels deliberate, guiding you deeper, nudging you forward. You follow the path, stepping carefully over wet patches and jagged crystal veins. Before you pass through, you glance back. The pool shimmers one last time, reflecting the glint of your light, like the eyes of the cavern itself. A gentle vibration pulses beneath your feet, softening as if the stone is releasing you, granting permission to explore further. You take a deep breath and step into the narrow tunnel, leaving the glimmering pool behind, its reflections lingering in your mind. The tunnel opens gradually, spilling you into a gallery that stretches farther than your light can reach. Shadows drape the walls in uneven folds, creating pockets of darkness where your gaze hesitates. The air is colder here, tinged with a faint metallic scent, like iron left to rust underground, and carries a whisper of moisture that clings to your skin. The floor beneath your feet is uneven, polished in patches, rough in others, and scattered with small stones that shift under your weight. Each step creates a muted tap, but the sound fades quickly, absorbed by the gallery itself. You notice faint grooves carved into the stone, meandering across the floor like veins, guiding you subtly toward the gallery's center. Above, the ceiling stretches high, draped with thin stalactites that catch the beam of your light. The glimmer is subtle, but enough to cast shadows that writhe along the walls like living creatures. You tilt your head, following the patterns, and catch a fleeting reflection, a shard of light that seems almost deliberate, as though someone or something is marking a path. The gallery hums faintly, an echo of the vibrations from earlier chambers, but here it carries a sharper edge. It brushes against your chest, whispering along your spine, coaxing caution and curiosity in equal measure. You wonder why a forgotten civilization would carve such vast halls, only to leave them unadorned, silent, and suspended in time. Along one wall, a series of alcoves appear, each holding a stone fragment shaped like a partial relief or statue. Faces emerge from the stone, some serene, others twisted in expressions you cannot name. They are incomplete, as if the artisans had begun work and abandoned it mid-thought, leaving the gallery to hold their unfinished intentions. You run your fingers along one fragment, and a faint vibration travels through your hand, so subtle you might have imagined it, if not for the shiver that travels down your spine. You pause, letting your light sweep the entire gallery. A faint shimmer glints from the far corner, just at the edge of perception. You step closer and discover a narrow doorway, partially obscured by fallen stone. Its edges are carved with spirals and concentric circles, faintly reminiscent of the glyphs you saw in the corridor of whispers. The doorway seems older than the gallery itself, a hidden threshold that time has almost erased. A soft murmur rises behind you, almost like voices carried in the stone. You spin, shining your light along the walls, but the gallery remains empty, only shadows stretching, twisting, and reaching. The vibration beneath your feet grows slightly stronger, pulsing in slow, deliberate waves. It is neither threatening nor welcoming, simply present, an echo of purpose from centuries past. You step toward the narrow doorway. The closer you get, the more the air thickens, carrying that faint sweetness you've noticed before, mingled with the metallic tang of minerals. You feel the gallery watching, the alcove's unfinished faces seeming to track your movement in quiet judgment. Pausing before you cross the threshold, you take a moment to breathe, letting the echoing hum settle. The suspense hangs lightly in the air, not sharp or sudden, but steady, lingering as if the gallery itself is a memory trying to speak. And with a gentle step, you pass through the doorway, leaving the echoing halls behind and moving into the next hidden space where the stone seems to close around you and the air holds yet another secret. The narrow doorway opens into a chamber that dips gently downward like a sunken courtyard buried beneath the earth. The air here is heavier, tinged with the faint aroma of damp stone and a mineral sweetness that has been your constant companion. Your steps echo softly against the smooth floor, yet the sound never travels far, absorbed into the walls as if the chamber itself holds its breath. Stone benches line the perimeter, carved simply but precisely. Each one is low, worn at the edges, and faintly damp from centuries of condensation. You run your fingers across the surfaces, feeling the subtle grooves, like traces of hands long vanished. The hum beneath your feet vibrates slightly stronger here, a gentle rhythm that matches your pulse, guiding you forward with unspoken insistence. In the center of the chamber, a shallow basin sits, filled with water so still it mirrors the ceiling. You kneel beside it, watching the reflection shift as your light dances across the walls. Tiny crystals embedded in the stone ceiling catch the beam, scattering flecks of silver that shimmer like starlight in miniature constellations. You trace your fingers just above the water. No ripples appear, though the air itself seems to respond with a gentle brush against your skin. The walls bear faint carvings, spirals, and circles similar to those in the corridor of whispers, but here they are interspersed with figures, people, animals, shapes that seem to bend and twist in impossible ways. Some faces appear sorrowful, others serene, as if the chamber captures the full spectrum of human expression, frozen in stone for eternity. You wonder if these figures are meant to teach, warn, or simply remind visitors that even the forgotten were once alive. A low murmur rises, almost imperceptible, threading through the air. You lean closer to the basin, feeling the vibration in the stone under your knees. It grows faintly louder, synchronized with your own heartbeat. If you're still awake, let me know in the comments. Or maybe you've already drifted halfway. You whisper to yourself, a playful acknowledgement of the journey and the listener who shares it with you. The basin shimmers slightly, and for a moment you think the reflections twist of their own accord. Faces emerge where none existed moments ago, fleeting and delicate, vanishing as soon as you attempt to focus. You wonder whether the water remembers everything that has passed through this chamber, or whether the reflections are something else entirely, messages from the civilization that once thrived here. A small staircase at the far end spirals downward into deeper shadows. Its edges glisten faintly, coated with mineral deposits that sparkle in your light. You feel the pull of curiosity once again, your pulse quickening ever so slightly. The chamber seems to exhale, as if granting permission to explore further while keeping its secrets softly cloaked. The sunken basin remains behind you, tranquil and patient, the hum beneath your feet steadying your breathing. You take a last glance at the crystal-strewn ceiling, the mirror-like water, and the carved figures that peer silently from the walls. There's a sense of quiet resolution here, a feeling that the chamber has shared a gentle truth with you without uttering a single word. You rise and step toward the spiral staircase, carrying with you the soft echoes of this hidden space and the reassurance that the ruined story is not finished, but quietly continuing, one discovery at a time. The spiral staircase tightens as you descend, the walls close enough to brush your shoulders. The air grows cooler, heavier, and carries a faint metallic scent that sharpens your awareness. Each step is deliberate, measured, as though the stone beneath your feet remembers centuries of cautious travelers, or perhaps it's warning you of the weight of what lies ahead. At last, the staircase opens into a vaulted chamber, broader than anything you've encountered in the ruins so far. The ceiling soars above, obscured in shadows, and the walls are carved with symbols that twist and spiral in dizzying patterns. Some are familiar, the spirals, concentric circles, glyphs that hint at rituals or warnings, but others are new, intricate, and nearly impossible to decipher. You run your hand along one carved line, and a faint vibration hums beneath your fingers, steady yet insistent. In the center of the chamber rests a stone pedestal, massive and angular, different from the altars and platforms you've encountered earlier. Atop it sits a single sealed container, ancient, worn, and strangely magnetic in its presence. You lean closer, your light grazing its surface, revealing etched symbols and the faintest traces of colored pigment. The air around it seems to pulse, a subtle energy you can feel in your chest and fingertips. You pause. The journey through corridors, galleries, sunken chambers, and vaulted halls has led you here to this moment. You remember the whispered hums, the shifting tablets, the mirrored pools, the alcoves filled with unfinished faces. Everything converges at this forgotten vault. As you circle the pedestal, you notice small alcoves built into the walls, each holding relics that are fragments of larger objects, shards of pottery, twisted metal tools, fragments of statues, each seemingly insignificant alone, but together forming a subtle narrative. You kneel, letting your fingers trace the grooves, feeling the echoes of lives long erased from memory. A faint, flickering light dances across the chamber from a hidden recess. You step closer and realize it's not a natural source. It's the reflection of something inside the sealed container. The colors shift, moving like liquid fire, impossible patterns that seem to pulse in time with your heartbeat. You wonder if the container itself holds a memory, a consciousness, or some secret the civilization intended to hide forever. You hesitate. The air is thick, vibrating with a low hum that resonates throughout the chamber. A playful thought crosses your mind. Perhaps they didn't want anyone to open it. Maybe they were tired of sharing their secrets. You smile softly, tension easing just enough to move forward. You place your hands on the container. The hum sharpens, the light flickers more intensely, and a subtle warmth radiates from the stone. The seals, centuries old, do not resist. They merely wait, patient, almost expectant. You realize the overarching mystery of these ruins, the purpose of corridors, pools, altars, galleries, and halls, has been guiding you to this single point. Slowly, softly, the container seems to acknowledge your presence. A pulse runs through the floor, beneath your knees, through the walls, into the very air around you. The ruin's secret is no longer scattered, no longer whispered. It is concentrated here, in this forgotten vault, ready to reveal its truth in silence and shadow. You inhale, absorbing the weight and the wonder, the sense of awe that has threaded every step of your journey. The forgotten civilization, the hidden chambers, the humming stone, all converge here. You understand now. The mystery was never meant to shock, only to endure, to be discovered by those patient enough to follow the quiet thread through stone and shadow. The final corridor opens slowly, the walls pressing close yet welcoming, leading you into a chamber that feels impossibly ancient and impossibly alive. The ceiling arches high above, blackened stone kissed faintly by streaks of luminescent mineral, giving the space an ethereal glow. The air carries a scent of old earth and faint incense, though no flame has burned here in centuries. You step lightly, feeling the vibrations beneath your feet, as if the ruins themselves breathe in quiet anticipation. At the center of the chamber, a massive door rises from floor to ceiling. Its surface is cracked and worn, engraved with symbols that twist and spiral in patterns both mesmerizing and unsettling. It appears sealed, yet not by force. It is as if the stone itself decided to keep its secrets locked away until the right presence arrived. You lean closer, tracing the glyphs with your fingers. A faint hum resonates beneath your palm, deep and steady, matching the rhythm of your heartbeat. This is the culmination of everything you've traversed. The whispering corridors, the hall of altars, the glimmering cavern, the echoing galleries, the sunken basin, and the forgotten vault. All of it converges here, guiding you to this sealed truth. You feel the weight of the civilization, the patient intention of their designs, and a quiet awe seeps into your bones. With each step closer, the door seems to respond, the cracks pulsing faintly with light. You notice a subtle shift. One section of the glyphs aligns perfectly with the others, forming a pattern that almost speaks, not in words, but in understanding. You realize the builders intended this chamber to be discovered, but not hurriedly. The secret was meant to be recognized, not forced. You step back, exhaling slowly. The door hums with the energy of centuries, vibrating through the floor, the walls, and your very chest. You press your hand gently against it, feeling warmth where cold should have been. A whisper rises, faint like wind over stone, carrying a message you cannot articulate, yet understand. Knowledge preserved, memories held, stories kept safe. The chamber is silent then, save for the soft echo of your presence. And in that silence, you feel the mystery resolve, not with a thunderous revelation, but with a gentle unveiling. The secrets of the ruins, the purpose of the altars, the corridors, the chambers, they were never lost. They were waiting for someone patient, curious, and attentive enough to follow the thread through stone, shadow, and time. You step away from the door, heart still racing, and take one last look around the chamber. Dust motes float lazily in the glow, reflecting faintly like stars scattered across the floor. The walls hum softly, a lullaby of stone, guiding you back from the edges of forgotten memory. The ruins have shared what they were willing to share, and now the quiet remains, beautiful, patient, and enduring. You take a deep breath, letting the awe settle in. The chambers, corridors, altars, and pools fade gently from your mind's eye, leaving a lingering sense of wonder, a trace of mystery, and the comforting knowledge that the ruins' story continues. Beneath stone, behind shadows, whispered in the hum of the earth. You step slowly out of the final chamber, retracing your journey with the care of someone leaving a dream behind. The stone corridors and galleries fade gently in your mind, not erased, but softened like sketches left to dry. Each echo, each hum, each shimmer of light lingers in your memory, a reminder of the ancient hands that shaped this forgotten world. The sunken basins, the glimmering caverns, the hall of altars, they remain in your mind as if suspended in time, patient and serene. Shadows stretch lazily along the walls, and for a moment you feel the quiet pulse of the ruins beneath your feet, a gentle rhythm that seems to match your own breathing. The secret of the sealed chamber, once pressing with tension, now settles softly, a quiet acknowledgement that knowledge and mystery can coexist. You pause at the threshold of the ruins, letting your senses drink in the lingering scents and faint hums. The journey has left you lighter, as though the weight of centuries has been shared and returned in understanding rather than burden. You remember the playful whispers, the shifting tablets, the mirrored pools, and the echoing halls, small threads that woven together formed a tapestry of patience, wonder, and quiet revelation. Now, dim the lights Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum and let yourself drift. Recall the corridors, the stone altars, the glimmering crystals, and the hidden secrets as you sink deeper into comfort. Let the ruins' whispers lull you, not with fear, but with gentle awe. Close your eyes and breathe slowly, allowing each memory to fade softly into dream. End of script. Sweet dreams.